we have a tendency to talk down to ourselves, and it sounds casual. It sounds like it may be a joke, and in reality, you are telling yourself a story. Welcome back to Bold Clarity, where we slow the noise, tell the truth, and make space for the person that we're becoming. So I am so excited for today's topic, which is around the stories that we tell ourselves. I did not realize, probably until about 4 years ago, how many stories I told myself, and even about others that A, were not true, and B, were impacting my mindset and my relationships and my productivity. And so I have learned how to hear the voice that you might have in your head that's telling you certain things, and acknowledge where it's coming from and figure out how to move forward. So as a part of this kind of process, I think the first thing that you want to do is think about, how do you talk to yourself? So a lot of times we don't realize the power that those words that we use to describe ourselves have on what we then start to believe about ourselves. The first thing that I want to make note of is acknowledging how you talk to yourself. And when I say how, I'm not even getting to the content of what you're saying. I'm talking tone, attitude. These things matter. And if we're all honest, I'm pretty sure we can recall even a time from today where we thought something about ourselves, and when we thought about it, there was a certain tone that we said it, right? One of the things that I'm working on is saying very frequently, "Oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot." Sounds harmless, right? Sounds just like you're just a normal day, just maybe saying some things about yourself. Maybe you messed something up. And how meaningful is it that me, the person who is in charge of me, I am telling myself that I am an idiot? I know that's not true, right? I know that that tone that I use with myself is not a tone I would use with anybody else. And yet I still do it because it seems playful in the moment, right? You lead yourself before you lead anybody else. And when we think about leaders and what causes us to, want to be influenced by them, a lot of times you're looking at how that leader talks about themselves. How are they describing themselves? How are they describing themselves when they make a mistake? Are they saying, "I'm such an idiot," or are they owning it and keeping it moving? These seemingly small details around the language and the tone that we use when we talk about ourselves internally become the truths that we ultimately live out, and a lot of times we don't even realize it. And so, as uncomfortable and as silly as it may be, taking some time throughout the day just to have some affirmations that you say or sing to yourself or write them down, just something that is you encouraging you, is so important, because if you are not encouraging yourself, if you're not respecting yourself, if you're not talking yourself up, it's going to be really difficult for the people around you to do that. And more importantly, it's going to be really difficult for you to grow and become this person that you say that you want to be. When you feel the urge to, yell at yourself essentially, or talk down to yourself, I encourage you to take a pause and redirect yourself as if you were redirecting your friend. I'm sure we've all had a moment where, our friend says something about themselves and we're like, what? Don't say that about yourself, right? Don't talk to my friend like that. You need to do the same thing to yourself. So when you find yourself saying these negative things about yourself, take the time to say, "No, I'm not going to talk about myself like that. I will not." You own that story. You own what you're telling yourself. And that creates the opportunity for you to tell a story that is honest and a story that is powerful and that will direct you where you want to go. So that's the first part of this process. It's just pausing and thinking, okay, how am I talking to myself? Next, we want to get into some of the content of the conversations that we have. And this is a little different because a lot of times we take moments where something may be true in a specific scenario, and then we turn it into something that is absolute, and ultimately it's a lie that we tell ourselves, right? It's this internal block that we just keep feeding that tells us we can't do something or we shouldn't do something, and really just speaks to your fear. So I know I spoke on the first episode about my first day with my team and how we had training and we were talking about the importance of taking care of yourself. And full circle moment, that is now one of the classes that I teach when I'm training agents. And whenever I teach this class, the first thing that I do is I put up a bunch of statements on the screen and I ask people for their thoughts, right? Some of these statements will be things like, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'll never find love, I cannot be organized. These absolute statements that we use very frequently, that when you take a moment to dissect them, they're usually not true, right? I know a huge one that I talked about previously was me not being organized. I had just taken on this belief that I just could not be an organized person. And I internalized that and made it the absolute truth when you really look at it, that was not true, right? There might have been moments where I wasn't organized. There might have been moments where I forgot things, but it is not true that just overall, in general, I am not an organized person. However, I wasn't saying to myself, Asia, you weren't organized that day, but you have another opportunity and then you can be organized and it's going to be great. What I was telling myself was, you're not organized, period. And every time I do this activity, people, you can just see the light bulbs going off in their head because you just don't realize how many of these roadblocks that, by the way, are usually not true, we feed on a daily basis that we just accept as the absolute truth when they're not. And so whenever you find yourself in these moments, it's really important for you to not just automatically say, nope, I'm not going to think that, and then just put a Band-Aid on it and think you're going to move on, right? It is an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself and figure out, how am I going to move forward? And so when you have these statements, take the time and think about, where is this coming from? Okay, that's the first part. Is this coming from a specific situation? Did somebody tell me this about myself and now I've just carried it? What's the origin of this story, right? You want to figure out where it came from so that you can address it head on and ensure that you do not allow this false story to continue. That will be challenging, right? You might expose some hidden trauma or, some things that you tried to kind of push to the side, and you taking the time to actually acknowledge and explore these thoughts is the only way for you to be able to move forward and minimize those thoughts that are coming. One thing that's really important to note here is this is not an easy one-time thing. You're going to go and you're going to figure out all of these blocks that you have mentally, and then boom, they're just going to be fixed, right? As much as we all want to grow and be positive, the truth is we're humans. It's also necessary for you to acknowledge, you know what? It is okay if I have these thoughts come up. It is okay if I say something to myself that, maybe isn't rooted in the truth. You can't control your first thought, but you can control what comes after, right? So allow the thoughts to come, allow them to stir up whatever it is inside of you, because now you have an opportunity to get to the root of the problem. And the pressure you'll put on yourself just trying to, I'm always going to be positive, I'm always going to be positive, I'm not going to allow a single negative thought, that is overbearing and it will make you feel very stuck, okay? So you want to say, it's okay, this came up from me. I don't like it. I don't necessarily think it's true. So I'm going to take the time to address it and figure out where this is coming from. A lot of that process is going to involve you just continuing to ask yourself a lot of questions. And I talked in the last episode about the importance of, having relationships that are aligned to who you want to be. This is one of those areas where having those relationships is going to be a really big advantage for you. Because in these moments where you're talking down on yourself and you are trying to figure out, where is this coming from? Where did I get this? It's important for you to have somebody that you can call and you can talk through these things with. And that could be, in a formal setting like therapy. It could be in a casual phone conversation with your best friend. And having somebody where you can say, I am really struggling with this thought and I don't know what to do. Having somebody who sees you for who you are and who values you for who you are, that can speak life into you and help you with that process is going to be a game changer. Because again, although this journey is personal, it is not something that you're meant to do on your own. And so in those moments where you feel like you're hitting a wall and you just need to bounce some ideas off of someone, have your trusted people that you can talk to about, what are these thoughts? Where are they coming from? How do I deal with them? Okay, so I have a story that I want to share of this live in action and the trickle down impact of these thoughts. So it was, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was new to real estate, and I remember my team leader at the time, who was just this real estate, just genius. She was so good at her job. She still is to this day. And she was like, all right, Asia, you're going to go and you're going to take a lot of listings for this team. And me being the newbie that I was, like, oh, no, I can't do that. Like, I'm just barely figuring out how to help buyers. I don't know what to do going into a listing presentation. And I remember specifically telling her, I don't have enough experience to do that. And then I even followed up and said, people are going to ask me, how many houses have you sold? And what am I going to tell them? I don't know. I don't have any houses that I've sold. I've never worked with the seller. And this one little seed of, Asia, this is something new and you're not prepared, just spiraled into this huge, huge limit that I put on myself for what I could actually do. Now, I ignored the fact that I had somebody who believed in me, that supported me, that was helping me by giving me resources. I ignored all of that, and I chose to just hone in on this idea that basically I'm not experienced enough to go and take a listing. And love her, she made me do it anyways. And I did. And I was so nervous and just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I don't even know how I'm gonna talk to these people. They're going to ask me a question and I don't know the answer. And I somehow made it through, and they signed a listing agreement with me and we kept it moving. And fast forward, I ended up really actually liking listings and becoming a listing specialist on the team. However, had I listened to that initial thought in my head, which was, you do not have enough experience, I would not have ever even put myself in that situation. But what I did in that moment, with the help of that community around me, was take some time to actually think about what was going on. Number one, she was like, Asia, nobody's gonna ask you how many houses you've sold. They do not care. Okay, they care about you selling their house, so you're thinking in the wrong direction. Okay, cool. But even if they don't ask me, I still know, and I think, okay, so this is actually stemming from a belief that you have about yourself. This isn't actually about the seller. This is about you. Oh, yep. Okay, why do I believe this about myself? Why do I believe that I don't have enough experience, even though I had all the support in the world, to go and do this new thing? Well, I remember when I first started teaching, I had some people say some things to me about being new and how I wasn't super effective. And I realized I carried that belief with me that I needed to be like overly prepared when it came to doing something new, because I believed that if I did not have experience in something, I couldn't do it. The silly thing is, how do you get better at something if you don't have experience? How was I actually going to be prepared to go and do a listing presentation and work with sellers if I never did it? Okay, so this seemingly small thought that I'd put on someone else ended up being this really big story that I was telling myself about how I can or cannot show up in a situation that is new to me. And it was also rooted in a lie, because the truth was I could go on a listing appointment. It didn't matter how many houses I'd sold. And I had all the tools and the resources that I needed to go and be successful. And by the way, the biggest resource that I had was the people around me. They'd gone on listing appointments. They could script practice with me. They could tell me how to prepare. And I was pigeonholing myself into this tiny little corner of, it's new, so I can't do it. That moment is so critical when you have this belief to take the time and to figure out, where is it actually coming from? What do you actually believe about yourself? And is it true? That opens so many doors for you. And there's a million examples of these absolutes that we just begin to accept as reality. I'm sure in any given day, you could think of, 2 or 3 times that you have some thought about yourself or why you can't do something or how it's not going to work, and you're too this and you're too that, and what if they think this? The reality is, what you believe about yourself is what you're going to experience. If you believe I can do this, if you acknowledge I don't have experience yet, and I'm going to get experience. I haven't been on an appointment myself, but there's people around me who have, and so let me go and ask for help. When you do that, there's no limits, because there's always resources available. There's always paths for you to grow, and it 100% starts with, what are you saying to yourself? If you're telling yourself that you can't, you're right. You can't, and you're not going to. If you tell yourself you can, you will. And you'll be surprised at this new level that you might unlock in yourself. I want to reiterate that even as I sit here today, I by no means am perfect and can sit here and say, these thoughts have just completely gone away. And every single time I think something negative about myself, I just immediately go into this path of discovery, and that's not the case, right? You extend yourself grace, and you're looking at the progress that you make. Am I doing a better job of how I talk to myself? Am I doing a better job of what stories I'm telling myself? And as you acknowledge that you're doing a better job, you will start to see that show up in your actions. You'll start to see it show up in your results, because ultimately you are working on shifting your mindset. And as far as I know, that doesn't ever stop. There's no goalpost that you get to and yay, I've done all the work and now everything's great, right? So continue to be in tune with the stories that you're telling yourself. Make sure that you take the time to acknowledge the story, get to the root of it. And if that involves you having other people that you trust be a part of that process, that is okay. Whatever you need to do so that you can start to believe that you have the capacity to do the things that you want to do and to be the person that you want to be, that's where you want to put your energy. That's where you want to put your time, and that's also where you want to give yourself grace. So I hope that we can all walk away with just a little more insight, an extra layer of thinking that we might do about the stories that we tell ourselves. So think about, what stories are you telling yourself? I would love for you to put it in the comments so that we can start the conversation around these stories and where they're coming from and address them head on. And remember to like this video and hit the subscribe button, and join us next time for Bold Clarity.